No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name is Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like.
Celebrity designer Jeff Lewis is back with Hollywood House Lift.
I'm excited to be working with new clients.
I'm not getting rid of that.
I hope I never see you both again.
An all-new season.
Those have to go. That has to go.
From oh, wow,
It's been an actual nightmare.
to oh, wow.
This is such an upgrade.
With celebrities like Josh Duhamel, Christina Ricci, and Gina Rodriguez.
Dazzle me, Jeff.
It looks like Chuck E. Cheese.
Stream an all-new season of Hollywood House Lift with Jeff Lewis, now streaming on Freevee.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
That moment when you've got 4 different types of boards up and you forget which sound is playing where. Welcome into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Also, fair warning and full disclosure, if the show has adult themes, I might not be old enough to be here, but we're here anyway. Welcome into the program. This is Weekend News Roundup. Unfortunately, Amy is off today. She's got some well-earned time off from over here. So she's off doing her stuff. She'll hopefully be back next week. But I am joined by some of my usual cohorts, our faceless, bulbous one, because for some reason, Restream and his camera hate each other. But he's here.
I don't know why. And I don't know why.
He's here. And he's also going to be joining us tonight for tonight. The presentation and premiere of KLRN Radio Players presenting a Listening Post Studio production of Treasure Island. So
I'm Long John Silver.
That almost sounds anyway. Anytime anybody says Long John Silver, I have porn flashbacks now. I don't know why. But
I have flashbacks of cod and fish and chips and clams.
Then, of course, one of our actual newsy types around here, because you gotta have if you're gonna try to do a straight news show, you gotta have newsy types on. So again, we have Brad Slager, contributor Town Hall, Red State, KLRN Radio, and now a regular contributor here on the Weekend News Roundup on KLRN Radio and Digital Beacon US News, which I happen to be the news director of, but I work too much and need to start giving other people more of my hats because I never get half the things done that I want to get done. That being said, how you doing, Brad? How's things?
I'm good, but you might get me in trouble if the LGBT pie community finds out that I just do straight news.
But
I don't want to be hate-filled. Did you see that one speech that came out of Canada where somebody came up and said they tried to do the typical, alphabet mafia representation, but she spat out this like 75 character acronym for what the MMQ52A6521X, and just kept going and going. And nobody knew what the hell she was representing. And everybody was like, why is she putting my password out there for the public to hear? But
well, no, she was doing. You remember how DC had the character that was kind of like Rumpelstiltskin? If you ever said his name, he would disappear. What was it, like Mitzelplix Politic or something? Yeah. So interdimensional alien from comic books. She was trying to give him a shout out and it didn't go so well, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, that's what that reminded me of.
Had to crack up seeing that one, but no, it's been a fun week. The press has been out of control. Kash Patel is in the crosshairs of everybody, and it's just been nonsense and ridiculousness. It's been fun.
Excuse me while I try not to die on the air. I don't know what just happened. I suddenly got a coughing fit. I hadn't even taken a drink or anything recently, so I don't even really have an excuse. But yeah, no, it's just, I don't know. It's been a really fun week, especially from my side of things, because, you know, when the group that keeps calling everybody hate groups is now a hate group, and we have proof that they're a hate group. Yeah, I think lots of people are probably about to be suing the Southern Poverty Law Center out of existence, because
that has been just amazing. And you would think, you know, proper thinking individuals would see this and be outraged. You know, how dare this hate fighting group supply hate groups? Instead, they've got this just avalanche of people in the media protecting them.
It's one of those things where I don't know about you guys, but I wake up in a new day. I guess every day is Groundhog Day in terms of, well, what new insanity will splay their crossed legs to me and hit me in the face with the vagina of insanity. And then I saw the SPLC thing and went, you know, as normal, you can't write this. How do you even think about this? The SPLC funds hate groups so the SPLC could keep them active in order to fundraise off the activity that the SPLC created. Have I got that right? How can you possibly go there and write that stuff?
I mean, it's definitely a convoluted map when you think about it. But the interesting thing for me, because I'll be honest, I've suspected this for a while, and I said this on the Daily Show today. You know, with what happened in 2009, that should have been the end of racism in this country. A person of color finally got the presidency. That should have been the end of racism in this country. And the fact that it kind of became the catapult to put us back into pre-1960s race relations has never made much sense to me. But when you find out that folks like the SPLC, everybody's acting like this is a new story. They have had this fund for informants for 40 years. 40 years they have been funneling information into their you know, informant little shell companies and everything else. And look, even if you just take it as straight news and not look at well, does this mean that they were basically paying people to start stuff so they could fundraise off of it? As we've all said on all of our respective things, that's pretty much where we're coming from with it. But even if that's not the case, let's just play devil's advocate for a second and say that they were legitimately paying sources for information that they were supposed to be able to use to fight, you know, racism, etc. So my first thing is, how exactly would that work? Second question is, they now have people that have made millions of dollars inside hate groups that have been paid those millions of dollars by a group trying to fight hate groups. Kind of seems like, even if you're just doing it as straight news, and even if you're just doing it as a straight, we want to find out what's going on, you're basically funding the very thing that you say you want to fight regardless. Because where do you think most of that millions of dollars is going to go to either way? Because it's not like they need the money. Of course, it's going to go back into their organizations. It's
but
just
like 2009, it proves it will never end. It will never end. It can never end because the spice must flow. And the cash to keep racism alive is flowing. As long as the cash flows, the race baiters and the poverty pimps will continue.
Well, it's a classic case too that they can't solve the problem that they're tasked with solving because that would make them insolvent. So they have to have something to go after, and it becomes a classic case of there's just not enough racism supply to meet the demand, so they had to go out and fund it. And it's just the aspect that drives me crazy, though, are the people defending this, because they're effectively defrauding the people that have donated to them. And they're saying, well, all they're doing is the same thing that all the law enforcement agencies do and get an informant in there. They're not a law enforcement agency. Sorry, shut up. And secondly, it wasn't like you had someone in your office go in there fresh as a new member and try to find stuff out. They were giving money to the leadership, the guys that were already established and doing things. I had a cracked up, and one journalist last night was trying to defend them, and even said it was informants. They weren't funding their activities. And he put out an article that he himself wrote that admitted the guy they gave money to for Charlottesville was part of the planning committee and arranged transportation for people to the event.
Yeah, he was on the call. He was in the chat. It was crazy. I saw somebody who was actually a longtime donor lamenting about that on X yesterday. And he was like, I realized that they were using my money to pay people more money than I make and basically stirring up the very same problem they said they were here to fight. Now, I've been, over the years, giving what is considered mainstream media a pretty hard time. I will say this, CBS seems like, even though it's having a hard time doing so, it's trying to yank itself back to the center. I'm never going to say they're going to be right leaning. But I saw this earlier today, and I was kind of surprised they said this. I'm not going to lie, but here we go.
40 years ago, the Southern Poverty Law Center bankrupted the Klan and later recovered millions from neo-Nazi groups, with lawsuits representing victims of violence. But Tuesday, the tables turned. The Justice Department charged the organization with fraud for allegedly misleading donors and lying to financial institutions by paying members of violent extremist groups millions of dollars to act as informants.
The SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred.
Including, the indictment alleges, a leader of the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, who, quote, attended the event at the direction of SPLC, made racist postings under the supervision of the SPLC, and helped coordinate transportation to the event for several attendees. But Law Center interim president Brian Fair said the group had long used informants and called the indictment a political attack by the Trump administration.
They have made no secret of who they want to protect and who they want to destroy.
You have to wonder if this...
Attorney Scott Frederickson questioned the Justice Department's legal theories.
Can the federal government persuade a jury that the Southern Poverty Law Center was out there funding extremism for its own purposes, manufacturing racism? That's hard to believe. Obviously, they'll have their day in court.
But there have been calls to investigate the Law Center for years. In 1995, the Montgomery Advertiser was the finalist for the Pulitzer Prize for articles alleging that the center was misleading donors and wasting their money. And more recently, critics say that its hate watch list of extremists includes many mainstream conservatives. Tony?
Jen, thank you very much.
Now, again, I don't want to pat them on the heads too well, but for a lamestream media group, that was pretty center. I gotta say, that was pretty center.
Well, yeah, that's what Barry Weiss is trying to install over at CBS, is a little bit more of objectivity, and the rest of the press is just lighting them up for it.
It's just crazy, though, because like the whole thing of, are they going to be able to prove in court that they were actually funding and fomenting what they were asking for? You heard from one of the people that was the mastermind of the Charlotte riot thing that, yes, they knew I was doing these. They were watching me make these racist postings. So it's not like it's going to be that hard to prove. And for all of the leftists who are like, I don't understand. I've been trying to tell you guys for over a decade. There was never a party switch. Never happened. The same party that funded the KKK is the same one still using them today to get the things that they want.
and the party of misogyny. I mean,
right?
How can they not see that those dollars are going to racist groups that were otherwise dying? They were moribund. They were not front and center in order to stoke more donations in order to keep the SPLC viable and racism front and center. You open a door and then what? Expect people not to walk through that door. I think I could make a pretty damn good argument that their interference and insertion into Charlottesville resulted in Heather Heyer being killed. The blood is on their hands. I can think of no other interpretation for that than just that specifically.
Yeah, we had a micro drop there for a second, but I think we're back now. But yeah, that's definitely a valid argument. But again, I don't, I know the one guy's trying to, well, I don't know if they're going to be able to prove this. I'm pretty sure some leftist probably trotted him out and paid him to say that. But I mean, the proof isn't that hard. I mean, hell, all you really got to do is even look at the anecdotal evidence. Like I said, I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. I know for BZ he's like fucking child. I get that. But I remember growing up and watching shows like The Jeffersons and all these things where everybody was making jokes about how things used to be and how certain people didn't realize that they weren't having to fight those same battles anymore. Then you fast forward to the year 2008, 2009, and here we are with a good chunk of white people happily electing a black man to the White House. And everybody, well, they only voted for him because of his white half. I don't remember how many times I heard that. If he was purely African American, wouldn't be no white man voting for him. I'm like, yeah, that just proves how racist all of you are. I mean, I didn't vote for him, but I didn't vote for him not because of the color of his skin, but because his policies were retarded, and that bared out his fruit over time. But again, that should have been the point where racism was completely declared dead in America, and instead, folks like Al Sharpton and their ilk have not only kept it going, but now we find out the SPLC has been using their same business model.
Well, that particular arse whore, Obama, was the one that then, once installed, decided that he was going to stoke and create even greater amounts of division. He was the divider in chief. Hey, look, for 2 terms.
Right.
Well, the thing that cracked me up was when he got elected, he and others were saying we're going to enter a post-racial America. And
Right.
almost immediately, 2 things happened. If you ever criticized him on policy, you're a racist. And then he had the incident where a friend of his was detained by police because he was trying to break into his own home and people thought he was breaking in. It was racism, except the police that rescued, or I should say arrested him, trained police in non-racial policy.
Beer Summit.
And the reason that they arrested him is because he became obstinate with the cops and told them that, oh, you can't do this to a black man. It's like, you're breaking into a house. Instead of saying, it's my home, let me go in and get it, he caused a fight with the cops and got arrested. So then the Beer Summit had to take place because after Obama came out and called the cops racist, it was like, no, I've been training against racism for 10 years in the police force. And it just showed you what a farce it is.
Well, that's the card that dun 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 racists play.
Well, yeah, because they and the thing about it is, and maybe this is secretly why the Democrats hate capitalism so much, because they're aware that their side is using capitalism to fund both sides.
Could be. But I mean, we saw, what was it, a year or 2 ago? Van Jones saw, there was like a police shooting in Baltimore and claimed that the individual, it wasn't a shooting. The guy got arrested, got taken in and died somewhere in transport along the way. Systemic racism caused this guy to die in the city of Baltimore with a black mayor, black police chief, and every single cop involved in this incident was black. And then he came back and said, even if the police are colored, it was still systemic racism. And he really couldn't explain himself out of that little corner that he had painted himself, but he's trying to claim that white cops over generations have baked racism into the system, so black cops are now racist against blacks.
I looked into this. Baltimore PD at the time was 75% black in its admin under a black police chief. 45 to 50, depending upon the year, to 60% of the officers in Baltimore PD are black. So by dint of extension, you're saying, well, it doesn't matter. The melanin count is immaterial. They're condemnable because they're cops. We don't care what color they are or their paint job. So they're inherently racists themselves, comma, you stupid bints making that argument.
Well, I mean, if you put black leadership into those roles and that doesn't solve racism, then it's impossible to solve racism, because that was the whole justification for putting him in those positions.
Sure, to reflect the community and the various colors of the community. Okay, they're there. Now what?
And this happens every single time that their narrative gets derailed. There was the case in Alabama college campus where a young man was found swinging from a tree on a rope, and they determined it was suicide, even though the week leading up to it, it was lynching, and there's lynchings taking place, and this is the South and the KKK and everything else. The medical examiner came out and said, no, there's, every indication this was suicide. Oh, you're just doing that because he's black. No, the medical examiner is black. Well, he's doing the bidding of white people. I mean, every single time. They don't have the evidence to support it.
Yeah, I mean,
well, that was 2016.
We all saw this play out earlier. I mean, I remember even as a kid, seeing a black police officer and then seeing other black people, as they're, walking the beat, which stopped being a thing. And eventually everybody started going into cars. But I remember in the late 70s, there were still some that were walking beats. And I remember walking into one of the malls, and there was a cop that was actually walking around that area and about to do their thing. And he was being yelled at and shouted down by other black people. Damn, Uncle Tom, what you doing with the white man badge on? I'm like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, you're doing the white man's bidding.
Damned if you're present, damned if you're not. This was the Freddie Gray case in 2016. Hey, guys, what do you remember about those cases that went to court? Oh, yeah, that's the fourth straight trial prosecutors failed to win in the case. Losers, the Lieutenant Rice or something like that, who was there, the highest ranking officer present. Plus there was a black sergeant present. Cases all lost. So, hey, thanks for pissing away millions of dollars, Baltimore, on a case that you knew was going to lose, but you decided that you were going to prosecute, because virtue signaling.
Isn't that the worst of it? Now, the one thing that I will say with everything that's coming out about racism, I kind of have a real quick clip that's kind of the other side of the coin. And I thought this was absolutely hilarious. And BZ was listening when I played this earlier, but we're going to run it right now anyway.
Oh, God, that's great.
This guy, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this guy when I found out that for some reason the Secretary of Navy was stepping down. But after this clip, this man may be my new hero. I don't know if Brad's seen this yet, but here we go.
That dude's
this is great. I know I'll be attacked by left and call me white supremacist, but I have one ask for them. It's just when you give me my hood, make sure it's got the little slits and not the circles so I can see better.
Do you guys know who that dude is? He ran for Virginia U.S. Senator. He had an awesome campaign. He's a retired Navy captain and an EOD Spec Ops officer and a deep sea diver. And he served in Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq. I mean, dude was active duty for 25 years. He's a stud. That's a perfect place for this guy. And he's hated because he's a turncoat. He's an Uncle Asian Tom.
Tom spelled T-H-O-M, I guess.
Yeah. He's Hung Cow.
Him, Uncle Tom. But yeah, no, Hung Cow. His I don't know. I know names mean different things in different languages, but yeah, that one. That's the only reason I remember that that's the only reason I remember he ran for office in the Senate, because I remember everybody making fun of his name when he ran for office in Virginia. But yeah, I mean, having the level of self-deprecation required to say, yes, I know you guys are gonna call me a racist, which on its face is retarded since I'm Asian, but when you give me my hood, make sure I can see out of it. I thought that was amazing. Love
But that's how you have to respond with, ridicule and mockery is the best thing to do.
It is the best thing to do. That's what they can't stand.
It's the only thing that they deserve. And the saddest part about all this that's coming out is you realize, if not for nonprofit organizations trying to make sure that they were able to keep their profits, racism probably would be dead in this country.
No, it keeps hanging on because it's forced to hang on because, as I've said, under any number of applications, the spice must flow.
Well, I've always said it, that the best way to combat racism and get rid of it, stop acknowledging race.
Right.
So we saw recently with the space mission that took place. I'm watching a number of interviews with the astronauts, 3 men and a woman. And it never even registered in my head first off that I was supposed to celebrate and be happy and recognize the fact that one of them was black. He was an astronaut.
That dude Glover was great.
And then the press brought it up. They're like, well, how do you feel being a black astronaut for the first? And he's like, I'm an astronaut.
His answer was fabulous.
And
I would, yeah, it wasn't an exact quote, but his answer was akin to, I want people to recognize what I've done because of my accomplishments, not the color of my skin, which I thought was absolutely amazing. So,
but I like to bring up what took place in the 60s. When the TV show I Spy came out, and Bill Cosby was the first black man to be in a starring role in primetime television. He went to the network and the producers and said, don't make my race any prominent subject. Don't promote it as such. Don't put me in the media as a black actor. And he's like, I'm an actor. And him and Robert Culp were in the show. And for the most part, nobody was jumping up and down mad or happy. They just accepted it.
Well, it turns out he may have had a slightly ulterior motive for not wanting that much attention to be drawn to him being the first black man in prime time, considering proclivities we found out about later. So that might not have been completely altruistic when he said, hey, don't bring that part up because of reasons.
But it was just, it has been proven out over the years, though, because you see other instances where there's people of color in a role or office, what have you. If you don't highlight it, everybody just accepts it and it works. But as soon as you say, yeah, but, and they can't help themselves. We see this in Hollywood all the time when the Oscars come out. A couple of years ago, I had to laugh because somebody won, and it was the first non-binary Latino to win. I mean, they're cutting these categories down so much now.
Latinx, remember?
Oh, Latinx, sorry.
Latinx. Yeah, that's exactly how I pronounce it. Look, a Latinx. It's next to a bobcat.
Our Latinx Minx gets mad at me when I call her that. But yeah.
Yeah, my co-host adores me when I crack that out on her all the time.
But you can't do what you did in the 60s and the 70s anymore. You can't have an All in the Family. You can't have the Jeffersons. You couldn't do that now. It's 2026, kids. We have devolved.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I talked about this before, and this is why, us getting back into actual space and not doing low Earth orbit stuff as much and actually trying to do things with the technology that we have, I think becomes a very important thing, because ever since the space shuttle program basically ended, we have had no choice but for humanity's imagination to turn inward. And inward imagination leads to, well, what if there are 100 billion genders and we just don't know? and all the other things that have come out. So now that we're actually seeing things start to be looking outward again, if you haven't noticed, a lot of that stuff, and it started before this, but now that that's happening, it seems like it's now dying on the vine even more quickly. Like you don't see as much of it anymore. You don't hear about it as much anymore. Now in the media, in Hollywood, they're not letting it go. But also they're finding out over and over and over again that it doesn't work. I mean, you need really look no further than Star Trek Starfleet Academy. What should have been a blockbuster show and could have been a blockbuster show, but because of Kurtzman and even the shows that he's done that I've enjoyed have been narrative first, plot second, and character schmaracters. When that was the tack that he took, nobody was responding to it, to the point where now they've shelved the whole thing. Now Paramount's not even talking about running the second season. They're going to do what they did potentially with Prodigy and sell it to Netflix and see what Netflix wants to do with it, is some of the most recent rumblings that I've seen. But all of this stuff, I mean, like Ilhan Omar as an example, put out her disclosures, her publicly required to release disclosures not too long ago, and her net value was somewhere, or her total value was somewhere between, like, what was it, 3 million and 9 million or something. I'm pulling the numbers out of thin air because I don't have them in front of me. But then she just released the revised statements the other day, and now she's somewhere worth between 9,000 and 99,000. Yeah. You or me turned in documentation like that, we'd be in jail. I'm just saying. I mean, this is exactly what New York tried to throw Trump in jail for.
California they signed a document that dissolved that LLC on paper, said nothing about whether they still possess the winery. They dissolved it on paper with the stroke of a pen. And all of a sudden, magically, she loses that amount of money. Amazing. I wonder if it's still there.
Well, that's the winery was being used to justify the money that her husband had. Now the winery's gone, and so's the money. Oh, we never had that. What happened to the wine? Oh, the winery's gone.
Well, here's the paperwork.
Yeah. Did you hear their explanation as to how they went from being worth, let's average it out to $6 million to $55,000? They forgot to account for their outstanding debt.
Poor babies. Lo siento.
So you're telling me your outstanding debt is over $5.5 million? Yeah, that's what you're telling me.
Is that what happens when you close down a child care facility with no children in it? It becomes a debt?
Yeah.
What a racket.
Dude, the scariest thing about all this stuff, and I talked about this a little bit today, is now that we're actually starting to scratch the surface on all the fraud, is anybody else starting to realize exactly how rotten all of our stuff is to the core? I mean, I'm starting, we've joked about burning it down and starting all over before. I'm not so sure that can be a joke anymore, because they have screwed everything up to the point where I don't even know how we fix it anymore. Especially when we keep trying to send people in to DC that tell us they're going to fix it just to not fix it, like Thune. I don't know if you guys saw this story today, but apparently at a recent lunch, he basically told all of his underlings in the Senate to shut the fuck up about getting rid of the filibuster, because we're not doing that. So,
well, and the SAVE Act obviously can go to hell. But the reversal question now has to become this. The primary question, the prime directive. Are any of our hard-earned American taxpayer dollars working actually now for actual Americans? Are any of our dollars going for pro-American ideals or activities? Any of them?
No, I mean,
that's for sure.
If there are, it's few and far between, because every group that we think is working for us, depending on what flavor of bent you have, turns out, like I said, they're basically doing the SPLC. If they're doing it, other groups are doing it too, but they've taken the arms dealer approach. Fund both sides and hope you don't get caught, because that keeps your money flowing. And that's kind of where we are with all of it. And again, look, I am a capitalist, but I don't know what this is that we have now, but it's not pure capitalism anymore. This is some weird, like, Ferengi style shit, and I don't like it. I don't like finding out the groups that wrap themselves in doing the right thing for people are secretly keeping the doors open for all the things that they claim they're trying to close. I, for one, don't like that. And at this point, like I said, because it's coming out everywhere now. I mean, look at what they found in California. They found a lot of the whole Leering Center model they found in Minnesota. They're finding in Ohio. It's everywhere. I mean, I don't know how. It may be time to turn America off and on again and see if that fixes it. I don't know. But culturally, we're just about as broken. I talked about this today, where this is the 250th birthday of this country, and there's no fanfare really happening anywhere. In most places, they're already announcing closing and not doing their usual even July 4th stuff.
Two of my friends who were in the Catholic mafia. I was not Catholic, but all my buddies were Catholic at the time. Two of my friends were on the 1976 Freedom Train, and the Freedom Train went all around the United States, and they took lots of pictures. It's our nation went nuts. You said you were what, 3 years old?
Yep.
I was in my 20s and pushing 30 in that time. Our nation went crazy. We had a Freedom Train, the 4449, which traveled the entire U.S. over all of our American rails. I mean, bunting was like everywhere, on every house. American flags were everywhere. And now we're embarrassed to embrace it. And all of this crap, especially with Muzzies, is occurring, on what will be an historic 9/11 celebration this year, not a celebration, but an honoring of, and our 250th anniversary. How does this happen? How do we devolve in that fashion so quickly?
Well,
it's a lack of oversight, for one. I mean, for whatever reason, our government is trigger shy on enforcement of anything. So, like, Tim Walz was just on with Jimmy Kimmel the other night, and they brought up in about the most softball fashion, brought up the fraud in Minnesota. And Tim Walz is like, there's fraud everywhere. They're picking on us. This is their justification because I ran for vice president. That's not an explanation. If there's fraud in your state, saying, there's fraud everywhere, it's still wrong. You didn't explain anything to justify it. I covered this about a month or so ago. There was a program in Minnesota. It was to help the elderly and I think military in housing assistance if they were on the verge of losing their place, and they can get a couple months waiver on rent, that kind of thing. The first year they had this, it was like $2.5 to $3 million budget. Within 4 years, $100 million. Like, did half the state of Minnesota suddenly become homeless or such that it required? Like, that should have been a trigger right there. How do you go from $3 million budget to $100 million in less than 5 years without fraud taking place?
The signs in national parks, federal national parks from the 50s had a reason. Don't feed the bears.
But it's just, the fraud's going to take place. I can understand that. I don't understand how it doesn't get picked up on when it's this prevalent. I mean, the stuff that Nick Shirley's turning over. You can go to one address and they could have 3 dozen NGOs registered to one address. That's a warehouse. How does nobody pick up on that?
Because the American media maggots are completely 110% incurious. They have no curiosity. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to know it.
Well, that I can get, but where is the oversight in the government? Where are the people that run these programs saying, wait a second, these numbers are screwy?
They don't want to know it. It's not their money.
Well, like in Commie Failure, there were 100 hospice companies listed in one single dwelling address, and nobody from either the local or the state government, or even the federal government for that matter, went, I wonder why 100 hospice companies have the same address. Kind of seems like there should be a program that automatically flags that kind of stuff. Just saying. And I'm sure there probably is, which means somebody was probably turning a blind eye to it, but that's a different story. But yeah, all of this is just crazy because it is so rampant. And you're right. The fact that Tim Walz not too long ago was like, well, this is happening everywhere, so I don't know why they're picking on us. because you were where we wanted it to start because you're a douche. Now we're hoping that other things happen too, but we'll see. But yeah, it's just, all of that coupled with the fact that this should be a year-long celebration of how, look, I get it. America's got some black markets on its record, but every country has those. Every country since the dawn of time and every kingdom since the dawn of time has had those. All in all, we are an astounding place to live, an amazing place to live. And I count myself as lucky that I was born here, because otherwise I'd probably be one of the ones trying to climb the walls to get in here. Because I would be. I mean, let's face it, where the hell else would you want to be? I mean, everything else is turning into Muzzy Central. I mean, you can't go to Europe anymore unless you want to put on a burqa, mostly. I mean, hell, like Keir Starmer, wasn't it Keir Starmer just today or yesterday said that, Muslims are the heartbeat of Britain? Like, since when?
The UK is gone.
Yeah, what the hell does that even mean? But yeah, it's just all of this crazy stuff. But then you find out that and again, much like with the SPLC, I bet you find out that a lot of these groups that were supposed to be making things better for groups in Muslim countries were secretly funneling them into places to help foment takeovers.
But see, if you want to conjure something staggering, I mean truly staggering, go back to 2016. Can you imagine what would have happened, what would have been revealed, what we would know now, because that would have set precedent had Hillary Clinton been elected instead of Donald Trump? What would we know that? What would we know under those administrations? Because she would be followed by somebody else, some other massive, insane leftist. What would we know now about the nation? We wouldn't know anything about this.
Not only would we not know anything, but I've said this for a long time. And this is even before all the stuff started coming out about how involved the Obama administration was with trying to tank first the Trump campaign and then the incoming Trump administration. I am a firm believer that this was, you remember in the 60s when the Democrats did the whole Civil Rights Act and LBJ was on record saying if we can pull this off, they'll be voting for us for the next 200 years. And I'm not going to say what he said, but you get the gist. I think this was supposed to be the 21st century version of it. And I think if Hillary had won, they would have lined up the Trump family, had them shot, and then nobody would have voted for Republicans for another 200 years.
That would have been essentially true. That would have been the precedent that broke the crux of the biscuit. I did a show on conspiracy all last night, 2 hours, and I didn't get to a scintilla, a molecule of what I wanted to cover. And what I said essentially is, we have a high trust society in the US. And so function in that high trust society like ours is kind of dependent on transparency and validated truth. And it's the exact opposite now, except there are lots of revelations coming right now. But the opposite is true because information is hoarded, it's unreleased, it's buried, or simply not covered as in the American media maggots. And the locus of this we are discovering revolves around, I would say, and you guys correct me if you think this is incorrect, the trillions of dollars spent on NGOs and fraud and waste and corruption and the programs, like air quotes, necessary to keep actual Americans from seeing or understanding how deeply we are being undermined and throttled by Democrats, leftists, and globalists. These are the freedom information, the freedom destroyers who want to entirely replace actual Americans with illegal invaders who are going to work for lesser wages under execrable conditions and simultaneously vote ignorantly to keep their oppressors in place, all in the name of acquiring free crumbs and the bread scraps and whatnot tossed to the floor from their masters' tables. That's exactly you, me, everyone else. Our paint job is immaterial. Actual Americans gotta go.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that you were wrong with any form of conviction, but I really can't. But this goes back to something else, that I've talked about before. You know, there was a reason Joe Biden flung the borders open the way that he did. And it wasn't just because, you know, we had jobs that Americans aren't willing to do. First of all, that's bullshit. If you give them a chance, they will do the jobs. They may want you to pay more than $3 an hour while they pick things, but they will definitely do the jobs.
H-1B.
The other reason is for that is, even though that was the cover they used, was because look at what they've done with all of these illegals. There's a reason we had a 3/5 clause back when we had slaves. We didn't want people that were using the population of people that had no ability to vote to basically cast votes for the things that they wanted. I didn't like that then. I don't really like it now, but I understand the reason that we had it. But again, if these people aren't legally allowed to vote, why the hell are we, at least in federal elections, why are we counting them in the federal census? And I say this, until we get everything fixed and we fix all the legal issues with our voting systems and everything else, I don't care what your legal status is. Until we get our system fixed and it actually works and we know there's no issues, as far as I'm concerned, you don't even get to vote in a school board election anymore. You don't like it, go home.
Well, when exactly the
I think
opposite
you
is
just hit
true.
on something I've been looking at, because everyone's talking about how Biden brought in all the illegals for the sake of voting. I didn't think that was accurate. And then it made more sense when you look at the census, because there's the argument out there now that you have to count illegals because they are impacting the local government and the state government. And therefore, if they're supplying services to these people, they have to be compensated in the federal side of things. And therefore, it's a money grab. So if you're counting illegals, you're getting more federal funding.
And seats.
It's just ridiculous that anybody's looking at it in any other fashion.
And power and control and money. First question for everything. Cui bono?
Who benefits? Not to steal your Latin thunder, BZ, but yeah.
No, that's okay. I know you know.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone's like, oh my God, this retard knows Latin. Yes, actually, I do. But yeah, no, it's just, I don't know. But yeah, all of this is just astounding to me. I know Amy's not here, but I'm going to have her here in spirit because I saw this story earlier today and didn't get a chance to touch on it on the show, of course, because it hadn't gone out yet. But I heard rumblings that she was going to be putting it out. So I don't know if you guys have seen this yet, but apparently the Trump administration is launching a civil rights investigation into the New York City Department of Education. Which I think, yeah, but and this is exactly what I'm talking about, because everybody that's freaking out about everything that's going on happening all at once, this is exactly what we need. We need an administration that is able to walk and chew gum at the same time and actually accomplish multi-tiered approaches to everything. That's like what's happening in Iran right now. We're squeezing them economically. We're squeezing them militarily. There's almost nothing left of that regime. And as a matter of fact, the guy who's supposedly in charge, or at least their mouthpiece for the guy who's supposedly in charge, just left for Pakistan to go, talk to the Pakistanis about trying to see if they can get America back to the table. At least Pakistan, that's what they want to know. And I don't understand how and when it was that we stopped thinking that we were a country that could do more than one thing at a time.
Well, by dint of extension of that, we're also squeezing the shit out of China.
And Russia.
And, quite frankly, the UK and Europe and the EU, thankfully. Mm-hmm. The EU is operating as though, and has consistently done so, like it's 1945 all over again, consistently. And like 1945 never went away. Thanks, American taxpayers, for supporting us, for having some of the finest boutique welfare programs on the planet, and then accuse you of being barbarians because you don't have what we have, courtesy of the American taxpayer.
I just saw your piece, Brad. That's funny.
Which piece is that?
The one about how the most exclusive party in DC is keeping most of the press away.
Yeah, that one cracked me up.
Funny how that works. It's a party about the press, but let's not let the press show up. That's weird.
Yes, it's Nerd Prom weekend and everybody's excited. I feel bad. I was going to put a tuxedo on for the episode too, just for the occasion. But
yeah, I may actually buy myself one of those tuxedo T-shirts, so next year we can do the show in style on Nerd Prom weekend.
But yeah, the annual Nerd Prom, as they call it, the White House Correspondents Association Awards Gala is taking place tomorrow night, and it's just as ridiculous as it gets. I know one of my favorite awards that they hand out is for courage and accountability. And nobody can hear that without doing what you just did. There always has to be a chuckle following that. They just praise themselves. Everybody that won this year, of course, did so for trashing Donald Trump, including the photography award. It was for the one where the guy passed out in the Oval Office and Donald Trump was standing by the desk like a cold-hearted person. And it's just absolutely hilarious. But they have no shortage of events all week long. There's probably 2 or 3 dozen different parties staged across DC from Wednesday through Sunday morning. And I found Politico covered this one. The most exclusive that everybody wants to get into is the executive party. And this is at the private club that Don Jr. opened up last year. $500,000 fee to join this club, by the way. So I'm guessing not too many journalists are going to be able to attend this affair, but they've got Nelly performing in concert. So everybody wants to go to this. And it's like less than 300 people can go. And they said they've already had over 4 times the amount of requests for tickets to this thing. And the best part of all that cracks me up is they said, well, they are going to open up the doors to the press, but only some of them. And their source said, we're not going to let anybody in that's part of the fake news journalism set.
Fake news. Right.
All right. So I've got 3 quick hits I want to get to, and then we'll start rounding things off because I actually don't have a story of the week because I've been dealing with my brother's stuff again all week, but I finally got that done. So hopefully by next week I can start contributing a little bit better into that particular segment. However, I do have a couple things. That one I thought was absolutely amazing. Another was probably one of my favorite stories of the week because everybody who voted for communism in New York City is kind of pissed off today because in the same neighborhood that carried him by 40 points, he now wants to put in a homeless shelter and they're suing him over it because, everybody knows how much the left is like NIMBY because we voted for that, but that didn't mean we wanted it here. So that probably has to be one of my favorite stories of the week. Also, the media trying to eat itself over the SPLC stuff has been kind of amazing too, because at one point I even saw PMS Now saying, we're not so sure about this group anymore. If you've lost them, holy crap. And then my third favorite is this one. We're finally starting to see a little bit about the new class of battleship being released. And it looks like the first one to be named and put under contract is the USS Defiant, which will be the test bed for the new Trump class of battleship. And it's apparently going to, for a destroyer class vessel, it's going to be kind of big. According to the CNO, chief officer of the Navy, Darrell Claude, and the Secretary of the Navy, John Filan, both have discussed the battleship as known right now as the BBGX because it's experimental. At separate roundtables. On the sidelines, the Navy League Sea Air Space 2026 exposition this week, President Donald Trump had officially rolled out plans for the Trump class, the first of which currently is set to be named as the Defiant as of last December. But from what the Navy shared so far, the warship will displace approximately 35,000 tons. That is 3 times the displacement of the newest Flight 3 subvariant of the Arleigh Burke class destroyer. They will also be between 840 and 880 feet long. They will have a beam, which is the widest point of the hull for anybody who doesn't know, between 105 and 115 feet and be able to reach a top speed greater than 30 knots. The armament will include the following: a mix of nuclear and conventional missiles, including hypersonic types loaded into large vertical launch systems, VLS arrays. They will also have an electromagnetic railgun, which makes my sci-fi nerdiness tingle a bit.
Baby.
a pair of traditional 5-inch naval guns. And my favorite part, laser-directed energy weapons.
Lasers, baby. Hell yeah.
Now, apparently, the estimated fleet cost for the plan will be around $43.5 billion. And who knows, because this is still basically in the drawing phase stages. but if this happens, there's a lot of coolness happening here. So yeah, it'll have surface launch cruise missiles. It'll have 12 cells for that, 12 cells for Mark 41 vertical launch systems. It'll have one railgun, 2 5-inch guns, and either two 300 kilowatt or 2 600 kilowatt lasers. Which is really funny when you think about it, because everybody made fun of the Space Force when it happened, and then we found out during the Iran stuff that we actually, not only do we have lasers that can melt things from space, we have lasers now that are starting to be mounted on ships. That's pretty cool.
Well, what is a ship? A ship is a great hole in the water that can contain what? An ass ton of batteries.
But anyway, so that was my contribution before we start moving on to everybody else, because we are getting to the end. BZ, we'll probably start with you. I know you don't usually. I don't know. I know you write sometimes for you guys' website. So do you have anything that you've written out this week, or anything that you've covered that was your favorite story so far this week?
I haven't written anything, but I come from a time when this country was united, and I see nothing but division, and this continues with that division. There's a new survey that just came out. 2026 AM/FM radio listening hits an all-time low as digital surges to 44%. There was a time when you had AM and FM radio and everybody listened to it, and all the hits were in a centralized place where you could see it and enjoy it and share your society and share your culture. We're being divided. This is something, I mean, if terrestrial radio is removed from, say, automobiles, radio's dead.
Sorry, I was getting a sip of coffee. I would love to say that you're wrong, but yeah, I just had a friend who just got replaced in the mornings again. So yeah. The thing about it is, everybody thought radio was dying for a while. I mean, everybody remember the song from the 80s, Video Killed the Radio Star. So we thought it was on the way out for a while. I will say this, while it does continue in various forms, thanks to digital platforms like this, we are being divided off more and more and more. So I kind of see where you're going with it, because everybody kind of splits off into their own stuff that they like to listen to. And half the time anymore, you can't even talk to people about things you'd like to listen to, or they start yelling at you for being racist or speciesist or whatever. So it is kind of weird. But anyway, where can folks find you, sir?
I am BZ from BZ. Okay, thanks. BZ's Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the SHR Media Network on Tuesday and Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern. And I am your conservative Sherpa. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Don't forget, folks, he'll be with us tonight for Treasure Island as well. Everybody say good afternoon to BZ. He's going to be going into the back now as we start rounding things out. And Brad, where to find you, sir?
It can be heard right here at KLRN Thursday nights, Tuesday nights. I got shows that abound, and you can hear me, you can read me over at townhall.com, where I got a daily media column there called Riff from the Headlines, also on the front page of Red State, and I got a twice weekly podcast there where I cover the press called Liable Sources, having more fun at their expense.
Nice. And what about you? What stories you got for us this week? Anything interesting other than the nerd problem one we've already talked about?
Well, I got a couple quick hits, just staying on the nerd prom thing. You know, I saw one media guy trashing CBS and Barry Weiss, and then we had David Folkenflik over at NPR complaining about how there's just too many of these right of center news outlets in the White House diluting the question. So it basically boiled down to this: the First Amendment is kind of the big thing at the nerd prom. They always talk about it. So what we're looking at this week are journalists declaring other journalists are unqualified as journalists during the journalist celebration week, as journalists are complaining about protecting the integrity of journalists.
I got to say this White House press room has probably been the most open and receptive I've ever seen. Hell, I saw a TMZ reporter asking the Secretary of War a question earlier today. I'm like, TMZ, really? And yeah, it was the most TMZ question ever, because he's like, tell me how you feel every time you send these people off to war. Like, really?
I knew they were coming to Washington. I did not know they got a press pass in the Pentagon, however. So that's could be interesting going forward.
Yeah, that could definitely be interesting going forward.
But I loved Newsweek had what I have to think is some of the most fractured journalism going. So they put out a story about Donald Trump during a meeting about the Iraq war, wanting the nuclear codes, and basically the generals had to shoot him down and hold him back.
Right.
Now.
Yeah, I almost got suspended from X for talking about that.
But this is so that's the headline. This is in the body of the Newsweek piece, though. These are unverified claims circling online. The individual as the source did not provide evidence, did not identify sources of his account. He also did not name his source. Newsweek has not been able to independently verify when the footage was taken. There's no public evidence that Trump attempted to initiate a nuclear strike. There's no credible news organization that has independently reported that Trump sought access to nuclear launch authority. And these are all like separate paragraphs in the story, yet they still go with the headline that Trump tried to do this.
Well, of course they did. This is like, I remember the story from the what was it, 2021, January 6, 2021, when somebody who wasn't even in the car with him started trying to, I know for a fact he tried to wrench the steering wheel away from the driver. In the Beast, by the way, which has partitions and a third set of seats and everything else, which would have made that impossible, but sure.
Yeah, that was the Cassidy Hutchinson testimony at the January 6th trial, or hearing, I should say. But I'm hearing her say this, and in real time, I'm like, wait a second. She's hearing somebody talk about what they heard a Secret Service agent talking about regarding the other Secret Service agents in the car. So this is fourth-hand information from somebody that wasn't even close to what happened. Gospel.
Wow. Nice. All right. Well, I didn't see you in the cast list, so I'm assuming you're not with us tonight.
Oh no, I am. My character doesn't rear up until like the third act.
I must have missed it when I was going through the cast list. But anyway, so he'll be joining us tonight for Treasure Island as well. All right, Brad.
Sure will.
Say bye to everybody.
We'll see you, folks. Have a great weekend.
All right, make sure you guys come back tonight for 8:30 p.m. Eastern tonight with Treasure Island. My name is Rick Robinson. I am the general manager, KLRNradio.com, also the news director, Digital Beacon US News.com. And one more little quick hit on the way out the door, because I just found this, and this is again from Amy Curtis. So apparently the official account for the Democrats on X tried to go after the new Secretary of the Navy, Hung Kao. But apparently they got so much flack over it that they tried to delete it. But the internet is forever. So, of course, Amy has a story all about it. I'll be pushing that out in a minute on X. Also, since she's not here to do it for herself, she does have a book out. Just go search for Amy Curtis on, believe it or not, it'll show up under her name too, because the title escapes with the title of the book. But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get out of here. I hope everybody has great rest of your day, and thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We'll be back. I'll be back later tonight for Treasure Island. Remember, no he said, she said, but you should still come hang out because Aggie and I are both in the play. So still counts. Still counts. Bye, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And remember, all the racists are not us. Just remember.